The Great Disappointment. The visit to Jerusalem can rightly be seen as the end of his childhood. By seeing all the commercial activity in and around the temple, he lost his nostalgic childhood image of Judaism. And in this short week, he lost his childish, naive gaze. And his consciousness began to see the bad sides of a traditional concept of God. Throughout his happy childhood, all the people around him had always spoken with great reverence about Jerusalem and her temple. This had led the young Jesus to associate the temple in his mind with pious worship of God and people seeking truth. He longed to soon behold this in reality. Seen from the Mount of Olives, the temple exceeded all Jesus' expectations, but the great disappointment began once he entered the holy gates. In the company of his parents, Jesus walked through the courts of the temple to join the group of the new sons of the law who were about to be ordained citizens of Israel. He was a little disappointed by the disorderly behavior of the many people in the temple, and he did not like the fact that the men and women were separated in the temple, which meant that his mother Mary was not close to him during the dedication ceremony. The longer he thought about this, the less he could reconcile it with his view of God, and this came out later that week through his questions to the scribes. He went through the rites of ordination, but was disappointed with the superficial and routine manner in which they were performed. He missed the personal interest that characterized the ceremonies in the synagogue at Nazareth. He then returned to greet his mother and prepared to accompany his father on his first tour of the temple with its various courts, galleries, and corridors. The temple grounds could accommodate more than 200,000 believers at a time, and although the sheer size of these buildings made a deep impression on him, he was more captivated by contemplating the spiritual significance of the temple ceremonies and the worship associated with them. Although the beauty of the temple rites struck him deeply, he was also deeply disappointed by the explanation of the real meaning of these ceremonies. Jesus simply would not accept explanations of worship and religious that were based on belief in a wrathful God or on the wrath of the Almighty. Everywhere Jesus went in the temple courts, he was shocked and filled with disgust by the spirit of irreverence he observed. He found the behavior of the people in the temple inconsistent with reverence for God in his Father's house. But he was truly shocked when he entered the court of the Gentiles, where there was shouting and cursing. All this interspersed with the bleating of sheep and the murmur that betrayed the presence of money changers and the sellers of sacrificial animals and all sorts of other merchandise. Jesus felt great respect for the mood of the temple and its worship, but he was shocked by the spiritual repulsion he observed on the faces of many thoughtless participants. They now descended to the priest's court, under the rock ledge in front of the temple where the altar stood, to watch the killing of the many sacrificial animals. The blood-stained pavement, the bloody hands of the priests, and the sounds of the dying animals were more than this boy, with his love of nature, could bear. The terrible sight made the boy from Nazareth feel impassive. He clung to his father's arm and begged to be allowed to leave. Joseph had seen how his son had grown nauseous at the sight of the offerings and wisely led him in another direction to view the Nicanor gate, the artistic gate made of Corinthian bronze.